So tell me about your inspiration behind La Raza podcast.
So pretty much I grew up, Chicano. I was obviously born in Mexico, but um, growing up here in my neighborhood and stuff, and having like high school friends, I think what got me motivated was like as soon as I hit senior year, I started noticing all the effects that were gonna hit me back like towards the future and stuff. Being myself undocumented and not really having a goal for me after high school. It was kind of just like I got to go to community college. I got to make something out of myself. I didn't really have like the thought of like because a lot of the at the time a lot of my friends were getting like acceptance letters to like big universities and stuff. And they would ask me like, where are you going to go? And I would be like, well, community college, it's the closest thing here. At the time I didn't even like have a driver's license or anything. I didn't drive a car, so I was like less fortunate than everybody else. But what really got me motivated to start like this podcast was to provide a space for a lot of our people, specifically like black and brown individuals who, you know, I want to give a chance for them to share their story and put it out there with like uttermost respect. And there's always boundaries to that. I don't want to just tell a person to tell their story and then it's kind of like disrespectful in a way for them. So most of it was just kind of like wanting to give back to my community. I've been living here in the same neighborhood for pretty much all my life, and I've seen, the ugly, I've seen the good. So it just kind of like comes and goes. The motivation was here at one point, and I'm not gonna lie, there was times where I was like, there's not really like, there's no like, I didn't see like the goal at the end.
Hmm.
So it was hard for me to just keep the ball rolling, and slowly but surely I've been kind of working on it. A lot of it is like new to myself. I've never really had to deal with like a bunch of computer stuff and editing and all that, and just getting the microphone was like a huge thing for me. So um but yeah, I mean, it was mostly about also getting like the stereotypes out of the way. I feel like in our community there's a lot of like negative stereotypes that just put labels on everybody. And so at one point I thought, well, by me sharing my story about how I grew up in a neighborhood influenced by gangs and stuff, and coming from an undocumented family, I was able to reach out to individuals that maybe were the same, or they experienced the same tragedies and stuff like that. And so far I've gotten like positive feedback about it. There are times where certain people have reached out to me and say like, you shouldn't be saying this and that, like, but at the end of the day it's like it's my story. It's pretty much who what shaped me and for who I am today.
Hmm.
And it feels good to be able to reach out to people who they don't feel like they're accepted in different places. It's definitely put me out there more than what I thought. uh but so far it's been good. Everything that the podcast is about is for the people, and it's just giving back to the community that watched me grow up.
Hmm.
Giving back to like my culture and stuff. And yeah, pretty much.
Hmm. What really drew me to your podcast too is there's very few Latinos in media, right? There's very few Latinos telling other Latino stories and all kind of platforms. And that's why I like podcasts because, a friend of mine actually pretty recently in a recording, he told me the revolution will not be televised. And, basically saying that like revolution is not going to be televised onto the main channels, the, CBS, ABCs, but it's going to be on platforms like this, podcast, YouTube, other stuff, more independent radios, that kind of thing. And so what really drew me to your podcast is it's an actual individual, because I listened to a few different podcasts, a few different NPR podcasts, and I think they're great. But I think they have like
Yeah.
one Latino. She's a Latina. I think her name is Saraí Gonzalez. She does a great job, but she's the only like Hispanic reporter on the NPR team. So sometimes when they do report things on that topic, it's like a lot of outsiders talking about a topic that doesn't really hit close to home like it does to you.
I mean, to be honest, I was the first episode just telling my story and stuff. I was nervous. You could tell in the recording that my voice was shaking and stuff, just because I grew up, uh I guess you can say like I wasn't allowed to really show my emotion. And a lot of time it was because of like that whole like machismo thing.
Hmm.
And so, to this day, people see that as a weak, really care. Um, the thing that I see is like we're all human, we should all be able to express our emotions and feelings in a way that, it can be accepted by other people. But there are going to be people out there that are hating about, this and that say negative things. And at this point in my life, I'm just like, get over it, move on. Like, it shouldn't really affect me. Back then I would be like, well, like, why are you saying this to me, or
Hmm.
I would just like shut down. But you know the thing of like a lot of the times I do listen to other podcasts as well, and that's where I get like the motivation to come up with certain topics, like through my own views, and a lot of the other podcasts, just like yours, have motivated me to kind of dig out like ideas that aren't really talked about, and to just bring them to light and see, like, we're actually talking about this issue is actually real, and we shouldn't be afraid to speak about it,
Hmm. What are
but
some of those other podcasts that really inspired you to pick up a mic and do your own?
so there's another one called Barrio Voices by Arturo. I think that's one of the first ones that I was able to like actually tune in, and like, he really grabbed my attention by relating a lot of the time to what he was going through, and those like negative stuff that unfortunately happened in his life. And there was an episode where I think you could feel the emotion. You can like just feel the emotion on the mic, of him telling the story when his mom, like, he had recently gotten in trouble, I think, and his mom and dad like came in the room, and they were telling him like, we have your back and all this and that. And that like that just reached out to me, because at the time, like, I guess it's just like a different type of content that like really gets to you, it like hits home
Hmm.
in a way that like you can't really explain. Like, you get emotional, like you get like flashbacks of like your own life. But man, it's been a trip for real. Like, I've tuned into a couple episodes of yours, and they've reached out to the same topic, that gets me thinking about life and stuff. And there's a lot of people out there that you've interviewed that I'm like, dang, like, I would have wished I would have had like a an interview with them, And there's another podcast that's called the Hip Hop Podcast,
Mm.
and it's run by an individual. I think is Brown 69, I think. And he interviews a lot of like, say, people who are into like the hip hop, like, realm, that have dealt with music, that have dealt with acting as like Chicano actors and stuff like that. And so that really brought to my attention how important like it is for us to put people that look like us just out there, like on our TV screens and stuff, because we grew up with seeing people from different colors that
Mhm.
weren't us, so that really grabs my attention. And it also provides like the younger youth, like giving them the opportunity to see that someone that looks like them is out there, making a difference, and it's all for the greater good. It's always like we always have in mind of just getting back to our community, you know
Hmm. Yeah,
but
because
yeah.
I think that word you're looking for is relatable, right? Like if you hear someone else's story, they come from a similar background. I mean, I know you, listening to a previous episode, you're also the oldest son, right, of a Mexican household.
Yeah.
So I know the pressures that come with that, and some of the things that you would talk about. Machismo, you mentioned it earlier too. And plain and simple, like I never really communicated with my parents, especially my dad. Feelings wasn't a thing. It was a lot of violence. It was a lot of
Yeah.
verbal discussion or verbal arguments. But it was always a tough environment to be around because not only so much the lack of communication, but they put a lot of pressure on you. Did you feel a lot of pressure when you were growing up being the oldest of your family?
No, most definitely. And I think no, even like to this day I see a lot of the pressure, even though I'm not like, because I have a sister who's 18, and I have a younger little brother and a little sister too. But growing up, it was hard because I had to learn. If you were to ask me about my childhood, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you like a lot of it, just because having grown up undocumented with undocumented parents, it was kind of like I always had to be there at every single point in day and time for my parents. Like whether it was to go to the bank, to go shopping, to go, to the Burger King or whatever. It was like I had to be there for them to be able to, you know, complete their duties pretty much. And so growing up, I kind of learned to just mature, like out of the blue, you know. Um, I just had to, there was certain times where my parents were asking me to translate stuff. And to be honest, there was vocabulary that I would just make up because that was like the easiest way to communicate with them, for
Mhm.
them to be able to understand. But growing up, I would have wished I had like a role model to look up to, an inspiration or like somebody that guided me to like the right path. I'm not saying my parents weren't like really bad people and stuff because I have a huge respect for them and what they've done for me. But it does suck when you're the oldest because you got to kind of do everything on your own. You got to
Mhm.
kind of adventure and it's kind of like a hit or miss sometimes.
Mhm.
For example, like I grew up listening to Mexican music most of my life. And so once I hit high school, I started hanging out with my friends and stuff, and they're like, "Have you heard like this song?" And I'm just like, "No, dude, like I've never heard this song or whatever." So there was like a barrier right there where I felt like I didn't really belong. And so there was times where like they would ask me like, play some music or whatever, and I'll be like, nah, like I'll pass because I knew like it was like there was a moment of like me being ashamed of myself,
Mhm.
not realizing that like I was able to like express myself freely because I knew that I was gonna get judged. But there's been a lot of ups and downs, definitely. My sister, she's totally the different opposite of me. I pretty much had to go through high school by myself. I try to be there for her as much as possible. And I guess people just kind of take their own way. Unfortunately she didn't graduate high school and she didn't even like complete her GED and stuff like that.
Dang.
So it's kind of heartbreaking. It takes a toll on you knowing that you're the oldest sibling trying to set an example, and most of the time you're just like, what did I do wrong? Like, where did I mess up? And but yeah, I mean, it just gets tough. Like there's a lot of questioning you do to yourself, and there's
Mhm.
no answers sometimes.
Mhm.
But
I
it's been
I
tough.
yeah. I was I have a sister, she's 2 years younger, but I can relate cuz we were very opposite people, and I always felt like growing up the oldest kind of get the toughest parenting, and I felt like, we're only 2 years apart, but I felt like my parents were always just a little bit more lenient with her. Like she had a later curfew, she could go out a little bit more in high school, and I was like the one that was kind of a little bit more caged in. And it's crazy to see how different we are though as adults. And I think they were strict with her from such a young age, but she kind of just where I was like kind of a yes sir, no sir kind of person, she was a little different. She didn't respond to that well. So maybe that's why they lenient or more lenient around her. But I mean, she really
Hmm.
didn't pursue she finished high school and everything, but she didn't really pursue college like I did. And, that was always something my parents stressed in our household because they hadn't ever had that opportunity to do something like that. Right. So, they always push college, school, education, blah, blah, blah. And, I guess sometimes I felt like I was living my life for them because that's what they wanted to do. And I'm grateful I was able to go to college and not so much, I did focus on the books. I got good grades, good enough grades, but I focus on like the relationships and networks and just different opportunities outside of the classroom and just try and really discover what I wanted to do because for a long time I think my parents wanted me to head this direction and I felt myself, you know, wanting to go that way and it's a struggle, right? You're butting heads. I mean, even with my hair, I just started recently growing it out because for like the longest time when I was a kid, my mom always wanted my hair short and she would even now she still sometimes makes remarks like, "Oh, you need to cut your hair." Like, "I need to cut your hair." Like, "I'm gonna when
Yeah.
you're sleeping, I'm gonna come and just cut it." And it's like, "No, this is me. Like, I want
Yeah,
my hair
exactly.
long." So it's just that internal battle, wanting to be yourself, but also trying to, please other people sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you mentioned was like your college experience. It was kind of like you were doing it for your parents,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like what I've kind of gained from my college experience too. And so it was kind of there was a point where my parents were like, aren't you gonna keep going to school? Like there was a time where I actually dropped the class because I couldn't keep up with it. And so me and my mom had like a discussion about it, and she was like, you can't be doing this, like you gotta stay in college and stuff like that because it's gonna get you somewhere in life. And I told her, I was like, do you even know like why I'm going to school for? I
Hmm.
had asked my parents several times, And they were like, no, like, what are you going to school for? And then I was like, you see, you don't even know like what I'm, putting my effort into, and you still expect me to just, be in college and stuff, which was kind of hard to like accept that, that response she gave me. And I told her like, I'm doing this for you, but I'm also doing it mostly for myself, just because I know that what you have gone through is, nothing that I would want to go through, and if I could give you the whole world, I would give it to you, within an instant. And just like my dad, like I tell him, I'm actually majoring in Chicano Latino studies to be a history teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been hard. I've been in community college for 4 years now, and it's been up and down. It's not been easy for me. And a lot of the time it's because I guess I don't really reach out to the help that I need that is actually like there for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I have a hard time like, concentrating and stuff like that. But even at home, like, I don't really get like the help that I would want, to get. And so that's what makes it difficult. And so it's it's in the end, I know that there's going to be a greater accomplishment, like this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. And if I didn't want to do it, then I wouldn't be putting the effort in for it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to be all worth it in the end. And I'm just hoping for that one day to, make my parents proud and actually like put myself out there for, what I actually want to do in life. So
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to major in Chicano studies?
just wanting to learn about my culture mostly. I grew up in, not being able to really learn about where I come from or where I descend from. And all through high school I was kind of looking for that one class that would teach me a little bit, like just a little bit about my culture, but it wasn't possible. And so, the little knowledge you would get, it was just kind of like, like for example, Cesar Chavez led the huelga and stuff like that. Like that was the only thing you would get out of the books. So a lot of the knowledge that I've gained has actually been like self-taught, self-educated. And I spent hours, looking at documentaries, reading newspapers, reading books, just to be able to gain that knowledge that I wish I would have had like someone give me or teach me. And it's kind of like my purpose in life. I kind of want to be like that one person that gives the youth the knowledge that I would have wished someone would have gave me, and just pass on like that torch of positivity going around.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunately something that a lot of us aren't really exposed to our culture, and if we are, we're told of our culture like in a totally different way, and it's just not right. It's better to just I guess learn it like yourself. And obviously there's other individuals out there that will give you knowledge and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of our culture gets kind of brushed over. I remember taking a history class. It was every chance I took, whether it was community college or at Sac State, I always try to take a history class as an elective if I needed some elective units to fill some unit void, right? But I remember one of my history professors, she
Hmm.
told me history is always told in the victor, right? Like there's always usually two sides to a story, but it's usually the person who won a battle or a war. And this was like a Greek history professor. She told me that, and I was like, oh, like that's pretty dope. It makes sense. So I remember I took like a history of Mexico class, not really knowing what to expect. And one, it was like an older white lady teaching it, so I was already kind of like, I walked in the classroom first day, and I was kind of like, man, like, but she was actually pretty knowledgeable. She put us onto some really good literature, and I learned a lot about the Aztec and Mayan culture. And I had uncles that were tatted, and they had Mayan and Aztec tattoos, and it was always kind of present in my childhood or in my upbringing, but I never really understood that, right? Because like
Yeah.
in at least in high school and in middle school, when they talk about Native Americans and especially like Aztecs and Mayans, they just talk about, oh, there were these kind of like savage creatures that did really bad, not really bad things, but they did things a different way. And the Europeans came over and colonized to save them and bring over Catholicism. And it's like, it's a
Yeah.
bunch of BS, because that's their point of view, right? And so it was really
Hmm.
cool to learn and understand, history of Mexico, going back to the Olmecs, what they were about, as much as we know now, and going on to the Aztecs, the Mayans, the differences between the two, and other little pockets of Mexico, and other little civilizations of what they were accustomed to. And so it was really cool to understand that, because in a history high school class, I mean, you're getting, like you said, Cesar Chavez. You know, the Aztecs lost to what was his name, Cortez, right? The Spaniard,
Yeah,
and that's kind
yeah.
of it, you know. So that's pretty much all you know as a kid growing up, and you know, but there is more history, right? And I always wondered that as a kid. I was always curious, like there had to be something going on in Mexico before, you know, Spaniards come. Like I know there was, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it kind of brought me like, all this knowledge kind of brought me like empowerment. It was a time where I was like, well, now I know this. So like, if somebody were to, talk about stuff, if they're wrong about it, like I can call them out. It
Hmm.
was kind of like, it just gave you like that sense of like power, I guess. Having that mindful knowledge in your head and stuff like that, because walking into a Chicano studies class, for me, fortunately the teacher was Mexican and she came from Mexico to teach here in the United States, which I think is like a huge like privilege. And but just the way like she taught things, it was kind of like, okay, I understand it, I get it. And it was just like, I've never been able to know a lot about this, but now that I do, it's like something that I'm actually going to take and like, you know save my notes about it, so in the future, I can talk about it as well. But yeah, I mean, high school was pretty easy for me. It wasn't much of a hassle, but the whole like not getting to know about like where I came from and stuff, it was kind of like, it was a bummer. There was like, for example, there was projects that we would do in class and stuff, and I
Hmm.
would I would always implement like my culture and stuff, and people would probably think like, oh, like you're crazy or something. Like, why would you do this? This is totally irrelevant to the topic. But for me, it was like, I want to get that sense to people out there that like I really care about like my heritage and stuff like that.
Yeah. What's like the demographic like in Windsor, in the city of Windsor?
It's pretty much mixed. I'd say like half Latino, half white. But just there's certain neighborhoods where it's all Latinos, it's all like Mexican family here and stuff, and there are areas where it's mostly a majority white.
Hmm.
So it's kind of divided half and half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I also want to go back to your podcast because I know on every show you do a rose and thorn segment, usually at the beginning. What inspired you to do that specific segment, and why'd you name it that?
So during high school, I think it was like around my junior senior, I joined a an organization called the Latino Student Congress. And so it was a bunch of like student leaders who met like at the end of the month, once a month, to discuss like topics that were going on around their schools and stuff, and how we could support each other, and like wanting to push like a vote or something, for the school district or something. And so at the beginning of each meeting, they would do like a gift and a baggage or something like that. And so it was kind of like a rose and a thorn, which in a way is like, a rose is like you're talking about something positive that's been happening to you lately, something that you've like looked forward to. And on the other hand, it's like a thorn, like something negative that's been going on lately. Maybe you're going through like a hardship, or you're not doing too well with your folks or something. So it was kind of like a way to be able to check in with each other, and try to be there for other people as well. And I think it's I mean, what's more important than self-reflection, because a lot of the times I feel like a lot of people suffer in silence.
Hmm.
And so it's important to be able to check in with each other and actually know like what someone's going through. So that's why I did that segment. It was kind of like an icebreaker,
Hmm.
kind of just like set the mood and get the conversation rolling. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to kind of vocalize, whether it is through speech or write down your emotions. Like right after college, I really got into just writing down my feelings. So I think as a kid, I stored a lot of anger, and a lot of times I would lash out at certain things that weren't even necessarily what I was angry at, but it just happened to be that thing that set me off, right? You're like a ticking time bomb, and eventually you're going to blow up.
Yeah.
But so, writing things down, whether you're like super angry at the moment, whether you're super sad at the moment, I found it to be like very therapeutical. And that's why I really, enjoyed that rose and thorn thing too, because you're just able to, vocalize how you're feeling. And that sometimes can be just like a huge stress reliever. You kind of just like, lay back in your chair a little bit and kind of, go on with the rest of your
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting, I haven't really interviewed a lot of people, but the people that I have, I can see a sense in them that like in a way it's kind of helping them,
Mhm.
Uh, for example, one of my homies, I was able to sit down and interview him, and it was something that like gave him the opportunity to just like reflect on how much of a success he's been putting in his work, how
Mhm.
much of a student he's become, and like where he's gone to the point where he can feel proud of himself and actually be able to accomplish more in his mind. So it kind of like I'm happy I'm able to be able to in a way help other individuals. And a lot of the work that I've been doing is kind of like just to reach out to those people who are like, say, still in the shadows, scared to speak up about issues, or they feel like left out of conversations. But it's just been about incorporating everybody at once, kind of coming together as one, and letting people know that they're not alone.
Mhm. So going back to the stuff that you've learned in Chicano studies through different classes, I've seen you post a lot of stuff on Instagram, whether it's about the Aztecs, the Mayans, or just different things that you've learned in that class. What are some of the cooler things about your culture that you maybe didn't know before you took those classes that you are really excited to know about now?
So I think there's a variety of things, and it kind of clashes with my beliefs with my parents and stuff. Say for example, like religion and stuff. Uh, there's a lot of things that they have been sugar coated throughout our upbringing as children and stuff and teens. And I've had the opportunity to be in classes with professors who kind of speak about like what actually happened. And so it kind of clashes with like the religion that I grew up, which was Catholic. And
Mhm.
the whole like the Virgen de Guadalupe is not real and this and that, and like the clash with like the Spaniards and stuff, bringing in like Catholicism to like save the natives and stuff. And I've expressed that in front of my parents, and at the same time I tell them like, hey, you know what, like I truly like respect your beliefs, like don't hate me for what I'm about to say, but like this is what I think.
Yeah.
But there are times where like it gets kind of like intense, and I kind of like tell my mom like, well, this is what I've been taught. This is what like some of the things that actually have happened. And sadly enough, it's sad to say that a lot of our people kind of just push like the real history aside, because they tell me either these are new times that we're living in. Things have changed, and I understand things have changed, but uh the history is still there. The impact is still there. But it's crazy to think about like how my parents grew up and how I'm growing up now, because they grew up in like a traditional Mexican household.
Mhm.
My mom and dad got married at a late age, I think 26 or 27 years old. And from there it was like, all traditional. And
Mhm.
so for me, kind of expressing, all these other things that I have experienced through my childhood, and, being hearing from friends here and there and family, is totally different from what my parents have gone through.
Mhm.
So definitely learning a lot about things definitely puts a barrier on family and stuff.
Mhm. And sometimes traditionalists can be very stuck in their own ways, right? Like it's hard to get to them. It's hard to not even so much to turn them progressive or, but just to open them to new ways of thinking. It could be a little challenging for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
I
So I want
mean, sorry, go ahead.
now I'll say you go ahead, continue.
I mean, I was just gonna say, it's just hard. Like, there are things where I try to like get my parents to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And for them, it's like, well, you're not really gonna do anything about it. Like, you
Mhm.
can't really change anything. But my way of thinking is totally different from theirs, and I can explain a lot of things to them many times, and I just know that they're not gonna understand. Like, they're not gonna change their mind. So I just kind of like let it settle, and just keep doing what I do. So
Mhm. So I know you were born in Guanajuato. Your parents moved you over here at a very young age. What was the some of the challenges of just growing up in a new country, also growing up undocumented, and just some of the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis?
yeah, so I came over with my parents when I was 2 years old, born in the state of Michoacan, actually, because that's where like the
Okay.
nearest hospital was next to Guanajuato.
Okay.
And so I was born in the state right over. Well, my parents come from a little rural like ranch, and so everybody from the community there had pretty much made the journey to come to the United States. And I'm having my parents heard about a lot of stories of people actually, you know at the time it was like people are getting jobs over here, making money to send back to their families and stuff. And so my parents actually were the only ones that crossed the border. I think with like it's my dad told me that at the time there was like the time they crossed it was like around there was around like 40 people altogether in a whole group. It was men, women, and children. But I was actually, you know I was in a car that passed through the border wall with someone else's papers and stuff.
Mhm.
And so coming over here at a young age, I can't tell you like that I remember anything. Like I really can't remember like what happened at the time. I think the earliest like memory of my childhood was like when I hit like kindergarten here, because I met friends there. There
Mhm.
was friends that really had a huge impact on me, and to this day like I still consider them like my friends, more than family now.
Mhm.
But it was hard. We had to there were certain things that we couldn't really do growing up. For example, we came here to California and we settled in Santa Rosa first with another family from the same place that we were from in Mexico. And just having to share that one apartment with another family was a struggle. Being able to divide things separately, whether it was food, having to clean our clothes, gas money or whatever, it was
Mhm.
difficult. And so there were times where it was like the weekend or whatever, and we couldn't go outside just because of the fear of immigration being out there. And we would go to the stores to get food or buy clothes. And there were certain times where like people would announce on the radio like, watch out, like immigration is out here.
Mhm.
And so you could just imagine the amount of fear that it would bring on us. And so for most of the time, it was kind of just like growing up with that family that we had settled in for a while, starting like friendships there, and creating a few friends around the neighborhood. And then after that, we decided to move and, split with the family there. And we relocated down in Ronan Park. And so that's around here in Sonoma County too. And so we found our own apartment and stuff. And that's when I started going to, I think, preschool. And for a few years, I was going through preschool and stuff. And it was cool. Like, I really didn't complain about it. I remember like waking up every morning and walking like the back trails to get to school, which was like a little trail. It was like a little adventure before school or whatever. And so it was kind of cool to just kind of walk with my mom and experience that moment of like just nature there.
Mhm.
But later on, we decided to move down to Windsor, and ever since it's been nice. I actually didn't even know that I was undocumented till like I hit high school.
Mhm.
And that was when I was trying to apply for my first job. I saw a lot of my friends applying to jobs and working at grocery stores, working with their parents' businesses or whatever. And so I was like, well, I want to make some money. People are enjoying the things they get, and I wanted to feel that way. I
Mhm.
wanted to experience that. And so I actually applied to a grocery store. They called me and everything. I got the interview. Everything went well. And so it got to the point where the interviewer was like, well, do you have a social security number, this and that? And I was like, I honestly don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I'm sure your parents like know about it, and just come back in the next day and provide us that, and we can get you started on the job. And so I go home, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I got the job. Like, you won't believe it. Like, I'm gonna be working at a grocery store. It's gonna be like a good start for me and stuff.
Mhm.
And here comes like the bad news that like I wasn't that I didn't have a social security number.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, what do you mean I don't have one? And she's like, well, you're not as gifted as the other people out there. And that was like, to me, I was, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to school, like I'm getting good grades. And at least that's what I thought that, was getting me that social security number. But in reality, it was, I wasn't born here.
Mhm.
And so, it was hard. I had to give up the opportunity, and that's when DACA came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I applied for DACA, and I was approved, and that was almost like $500 out of my pocket, which was well worth at the time, and which that's what got me into my first job and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first job was at the Home Depot, and it's like working at a construction site, man. Like I had no idea about like the things that I was dealing with, and so it was hard. Like I would have to teach myself, and like there was a lot of computer work, and I met a lot of people there and contractors, and people that were working on the daily that would come in early 5 a.m. in the morning to get their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was a good experience. As far as growing up undocumented, it's been tough. There's a lot more precaution we got to take, not just as an individual, but like as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to tell my siblings, like, just be careful what you do out there. Like, I know you guys are young, but keep in mind like our family.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, thank God we haven't had to experience any like casualties and stuff like that. And to be honest, it's been life has been good for us.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a lot of downs lately, but one of the things was that my DACA was actually denied the last time I went to apply for it,
Oh, dang.
and
Okay.
that was because I had applied for yeah. So it ended up getting denied, and I ended up losing my job. And I have had this job for almost 3 years, and it
Mm-hmm.
was something that was flexible with my school and stuff. And unfortunately, they let me go and stuff. But they understood, and they were like, once you get your things in check, you're welcome to come back, and we'll have a spot for you. And what more can I ask for when you already have something saved up online for you?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's taken a big toll on me, just because you know since I got that guy, I haven't been unemployed. I've been fortunate enough to jump from one job to another like right away. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had any time off, and for me to be at home all day and not even going to school anymore because school's online, it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult.
Dang, that's crazy. So does DACA, I don't really know much about DACA. Does that help with your schooling too, as far as, financial aid and whatnot?
Yeah, so pretty much that guy is like it gives you like a valid like social security number that you're able to use for like work. And then with the social security number, it gives you like a work authorization card, which allows like the employer to like hire you on the job and stuff. And to have DACA, you actually have to be a full-time student.
Okay.
Whether you graduate high school, you have to be enrolled in college, and uh, you know that's one of the requirements actually to be enrolled in school. Continue your education, because a lot of the time they're going to be thinking like, well, we're giving you this opportunity to get into higher education, find a job, start a career, and contribute to society. And if you're not doing one of those things, then it's gonna make them think like, well, why do you really need it? You're just gonna go back to your old ways.
Right.
And so it's pretty much like a free pass to do what people are already fortunate enough to do.
Mm-hmm. Man, I think
Yeah,
just hearing all that, I think that's crazy. Just based on where you are born geographically, that affects. You know what I mean? Like you were such a young child when you moved over here, and I was very fortunate that my grandparents both moved my parents at a very young age, so I never had experience through that. My parents never had experience through that, because my grandparents were able to do things a little bit more organized and whatnot. But still, like I think it's crazy. I remember, I think the verbiage has changed, but I remember being a young kid, and whether it was on the radio or on TV, they would always talk to people who weren't. They were always talking about undocumented people as illegal aliens, right? And I remember asking my parents, like,
yeah,
what does that mean, illegal aliens? Because as a 8, 9 year old, you're like, what? Is that from space? Like, what are
yeah,
they? Are they committing crimes? And they're not doing either, right? They're just people from other countries that weren't fortunate enough to be born on this specific mark of land. But I mean, someone like you come from such a young age, you don't even know what life is like back in Mexico, where your parents and your family is from. So I think it's
yeah.
that's crazy just to hear all that, man.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy because I've heard a lot about stories who, individuals who have had who weren't born here and actually joined the armed forces or the Marines or whatever,
Right.
and once their deployment is over, they unfortunately get deported. Like, and it's just not right. Like, what is this country doing to uh protect those people? I
Hmm.
think that the conflict is that, like, an individual like myself, if the day of tomorrow I was to get deported to my home country, the government is gonna drop me off in Tijuana. I gotta find my own way to where I was from,
Hmm.
you know? And there's a verse in a song that goes like, I think it goes like, I don't know where I'm going, but I know where I'm from. And like
Hmm.
that totally defines, like, the idea of, getting deported, getting sent back to your home country. And as much as I love my country, as much as I love Mexico and I'm prideful of it, I don't think I would have the same opportunities that I have here.
Hmm.
And there's a lot to thank the United States for allowing me to pursue a higher education, to be able to obtain a job, to be able to have an income. Even if it's not the greatest income, I still have money coming into my bank,
Right.
into my pockets, to be able to provide for my family and stuff. Which in Mexico, opportunities like that, they're not available unless you have an education or you're born into wealth. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's super ironic. A country that was built on immigration, right? People from different countries in Europe, Ireland, Italy, originally the UK, but they came here for search of better life, and now because of stupid political reasons, they're not allowing certain people from certain countries too. It's not even just like every country; it's only like particular countries. Mexico's a big one. A lot of people from South and Central America. They got to put limits, and you got to jump through hoops. And like I'm always super grateful, like I said, for my grandpa because he was able to get most of his kids over, or all of his kids over, all but one, because one was born here. But he was able to get all of his kids
Hmm.
over with papers. He slaved away essentially in the Central California fields, doing God knows what. He lived that life, so I didn't have to, and so my parents didn't have to. But man, it's a country. This was a country built on immigration. That's the biggest thing that they say in the history books. And all of a sudden now in 2020, or for the last couple decades or so, like they're putting limits on how many people can come in, and what's your purpose and whatnot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean it's been crazy to be able to hear about individuals throughout the news and stuff like that that aren't really like heard. I think I think the things that have been going on are just plain disgusting. It's unnecessary. They're putting little babies in cages and stuff. They're putting a huge amount of people in one place, and they're not allowing them to like speak to a legal representative. They're making them stay there and suffer. And unfortunately, a lot of people have died in detention centers.
Hmm.
It's like one of those topics that nobody likes to talk about, just because it brings a lot of conflict to the table. But like you said, this is a country of immigrants.
Hmm.
Back in the 1940s, I think, was when the Bracero program was introduced by the United States.
Right.
Like, the government was hiring people from Mexico to come work at the agricultural fields because World War II was going on.
Hmm.
And so it was kind of like, you think of it and it's like, this is their fault. Like, we didn't ask for this. Like,
Yeah.
this is something that has been caused by them. So now all of a sudden our people are becoming the blame of all the issues that are going on.
Hmm.
And it's just not right.
Hmm. And if you go further back in history too, the U.S. Mexico War, where a big part of Mexico was large parts of Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and a large chunk of California were all considered Mexico property. And the U.S. just kind of said like, "Hey, this is ours now," And then there were some battles fought and stuff like that. But it's like you just look at the history and it's kind of fucked up. It's a very fucked up situation, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're a little bit familiar with like the Native American history and stuff like that, but man, like way before this place was like,
Hmm.
it was a free land.
Yeah.
It was owned by the natives, and everybody lived like a peaceful life. And it wasn't until like people came to invade the country and stuff and they claimed it theirs without knowing a lot of it.
Mhm.
And so first was the natives, then the Spanish. Well, first was the natives, then like obviously the Spanish that came and conquered, and then you start getting mixed races because back then Spanish men were like raping indigenous women, and so like you get the mestizos and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that was like a huge group that moved down from like uh close to Mexico to like California, and then they
Mhm.
started like splitting up into different areas, which then were formed as states. And but it's just it's just crazy to think about how there's a lot of hate towards one individual group, when it's not even like their fault in the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like a lot of the Europeans, they did that all over the country or all over the world too, right? They didn't just do it here in the Americas. It was also in Africa, and a large part of Black history is stolen and taken away from them through slavery and the things that they did for them. It's just it's like it says that like divide and conquer mentality, and they were able to change and impact so much history just based off of like hey, this discovering new land and saying this is ours, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy to think about all this, like in the history books of the United States and stuff. They, you know, when we're taught at like such a young age that at the time it doesn't really like get to our mind,
Hmm.
that they explain to us like all the battles that are going on, but that's like our people's history, like being looked down upon, told a
Hmm.
different way. And like you said, history is written by the victor, and I like to think in a different way, like their lives are written in books while our truths are carved in stones. And it's been proven, like for example, our ancestors have a lot of like temples down in
Hmm.
Mexico and stuff, and it tells a lot of stories, even though like we don't really understand what a lot of the symbols mean. It's a huge like significant meaning to where we come from and stuff.
Right. Yeah, just because we didn't have or our ancestors didn't have a written language per se, like the English or Spanish or whatever that the Europeans were using, there was still very advanced technological. I mean, you look at the pyramids, you look at some of the temples that they had, it all had to do with astrology. You could tell that they were studying astronomy and different, I mean, they weren't just like these, like I said, savage beasts that were very dumb. Like they had a lot of people that were
Yeah.
smart in their cultures too. And one thing I will say about like mainstream society, as far as like Columbus Day, like that's a big one. I don't know if it's official yet, but I know a lot of people are starting to push for that movement of calling it Indigenous Day, right? Versus
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was like Columbus Day, Columbus Day, and then like I feel like at one point or another when I was in middle or high school, they found out. They didn't find out, they always knew, but I think more and more people discovered and were like shocked by
Yeah.
what Columbus actually did and some of the terrible things that he and his people did. And so I think it's great that we're trying to push the narrative for Indigenous People Day instead of the typical Columbus Day that was around for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah. And I think it's actually crazy how we can reflect, like I'm pretty sure you can reflect back to like our childhood days when it was close to Thanksgiving and stuff, and they celebrate Abraham Lincoln Day and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there was little kids going to school dressed as Christopher Columbus, dressed
Hmm.
as the Native Americans. You can name it. And nowadays it's just such a political like uh aspect that like nobody's kid is down to wear that shit, because they'll get bashed on,
Yeah.
but it's just crazy how times have definitely changed the way we used to live back then and how we live it now.
Yeah, because I remember even in kindergarten for Thanksgiving, it wasn't necessarily a play, but they would teach us like, oh, like the pilgrims, right? The pilgrims, whoever the fuck they were, pilgrims and
Hmm.
Native Americans, like decided on this Thanksgiving day that we're gonna have a meal together, and that shit wasn't like that, bro. There's a lot of backstabbing and forcing people out and
Yeah.
killing people when they weren't even looking. So it's like it's crazy. Like honest, like the United States history is very fucked up, but not a lot of people are down to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, shit. As far as I can remember, there was plays that we had to do in school about that shit.
Hmm.
Being all friendly and stuff. And man, once you look back, it's just like, what the fuck was I doing? Like this is totally what it wasn't.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you look at it, like the natives were there, trying to help these individuals that they've never seen before,
Hmm.
and so once they taught the Spaniards or whatever, um, how to grow crops and feed themselves, they totally killed off the natives and stuff,
Right.
and that's just the reality, like, you know.
Hmm. So, oh, hold up, drew a blank. Oh, so as far as like progressing forward, I mean, what do you, in your opinion, what are some ideas that this country could do from a political standpoint to kind of just starting with Indigenous Day, or or it could be wherever, but what ideas do you have as far as to like progress this country forward and kind of erase that colonization and that narrative that we've had in the United States history?
um there's many times where, let's say, art's written by Chicanos and stuff like that, Latin American people. A lot of our books are banned in different schools, and it's sad to see that because yet again there they are, like taking our stuff away. But as far as like the whole country and stuff, I think there should be like way more opportunities for individuals who are undocumented. And when I say that with the thought of you know obviously not all undocumented individuals are good people. That's one thing I'm gonna come to a sense, because there are a lot of people that run away from crimes and stuff.
Hmm.
you know Not everybody is perfect, but the people who actually have been staying right with this country and don't have bad records, being contributing to society as much as possible, I think they should be able to be given opportunities that other people of this country have. For example, you know a lot of our parents are fortunate enough to get their citizenship, get a green card, get a residency, and at the time, it's kind of hard to acknowledge that once an individual who has been undocumented for so long gets that opportunity, all of a sudden turns their back on their own people,
Hmm.
and it's just it's sad to see that reality. It's and you see a lot of the time, a lot of people deny that, but it's the truth. But there should definitely be more opportunities for undocumented individuals. There should definitely be more teaching about our cultures and stuff in classrooms. And I think a lot of the history books should just be rewritten.
Hmm.
um it's about time we stop like sugarcoating everything and just actually hit like reality for once. Because if we keep feeding our seeds, the way we've been feeding them for the past, who knows how many years,
Hmm.
we don't even know if we're going to see this country progress or not.
Hmm.
And especially during these times of like coronavirus and stuff, under this presidency of Trump, like we've seen a lot of like, I guess you're thinking like, are we really like succeeding in this country? Like, and the people who have been trying to like keep the ball rolling in a positive aspect have been put down. They've like shut them down into to the point where they can't even keep doing the work that they want to be able to help individuals out there.
Hmm.
But there's a long list of things you can think of.
Hmm.
I mainly focus on like undocumented individuals, but there are certainly a lot of things that are affecting a certain groups of people out there.
Hmm. And that's one thing you brought up too. And I remember listening to that interview you did for the Hip Hop Spot podcast, is that there's a lot of backstabbing within our own culture. I know one of my dad's distant cousins, she's like a city council. I don't know exactly what her specific role, but I know she holds a political office at a very local level. And I know I don't want to put words in his mouth because he hasn't told me exactly what she's done, but I know he's really upset at her for doing some corrupt things. And so it's, ideally the goal would be like, oh, we got to get people of our kind into positions of power, but then sometimes the power corrupts them and they're not even helping our people, or they're say they're going to help people. And I've seen you post some things too on your story or on you post on Instagram, and it's just like they continuously backstab. They said they're going to promise money and they steal that
Yeah.
money for their own pocket. So there's a lot of betrayal within our culture, and it's just it's a sad thing to see, because that's, as a culture and ethnicity that's been put down and it's like a minority, that's not the way to go about things. We all have to kind of rise together. We have to be unified if we want to come up together.
Yeah, and I mean, the battle has always been there, bringing everybody together. Like in the 60s, the Chicano movement, there was a conflict with the word Chicano, because that only defined like the men. And at the time, like there was only men leadership. And then that's when like the women started to come up, and the controversy is out there of, whether it's Chicano, Chicana, Chican X, a lot of the you start to see a lot of the X's in Latinx and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So unity has always been an issue with our people, despite the good causes that have been going on for a lot of years. And it's sad to say that, a lot of the people who are actually down for the movement, like they've changed their ways of thinking over the years. Um, I don't want to bash on a Cesar Chavez, but Cesar Chavez, for example, I'm not gonna lie. Growing up, I saw him as an inspiration,
Hmm.
because he had started a movement that was, specifically for farm workers to be able to get out there and get recognized, get
Hmm.
what they deserve for working in the field so hard, and also being protective um, for them, But over the years, you start to realize that, like, you look back and like Cesar Chavez was against like illegal immigration. He actually like put his people out there at the border, and they helped like arrest individuals who were coming over to the United States. And it's just something that, like, I guess in my point of view, like it angered me in a little bit because like I told you before in the beginning, we get taught our history, but it's obviously not taught the right way. We're
Hmm.
so used to seeing historical individuals as like glorified. We're so used to like glorifying everybody out there, and once you really grow and um, teach yourself individually, like you start to understand like not everything is a pretty picture. But
Dang.
yeah, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know about that Cesar Chavez. It reminds me, I took a history of Africa class in college, and they would talk. They in that class they did mention that there was a lot of bigger African tribes that would work with the Dutch or the English people, and they would capture other people of smaller African tribes and sell them off to be slaves. So that kind of just reminds you of like people of similar culture, people of eventually they're all minorities now, but it's like people
Yeah.
ratting out other people and putting them in bad positions, man. That's what it reminded me of. Is like, fuck.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. You start to realize like, once you grow older, like, damn, was I really getting taught like all these lies in class and stuff? And
Yeah.
at the time it's just all about you're focused on getting your good grades and stuff, obviously, and it's just it goes to show us like a huge lesson, like we're just taught the totally opposite way from what we're actually supposed to be getting taught in schools and stuff.
Hmm.
So I can only imagine like what the younger generations are getting taught in classes now. Kind of gets you
Yeah.
thinking.
Oh yeah, and I can imagine the whole curriculum, even in 5 to 10 years now. And I don't know if you ever plan on having kids, but like myself, hopefully in the next 10 years I can have some kids of my own. I can just
Yeah,
imagine like the whole curriculum is going to be very different. At least I hope so. At least I hope there are people who are trying to make change and teach things the right way, if there is a right way, but just a more progressive way, I guess, than ways of the past.
yeah, and just one thing about that, I kind of want to just put out there that during my senior year, I actually ran like a group organization, a student organization at my high school, and at the time we were pushing for what's it called, ethnic studies, to
Mm,
be implemented into like the school curriculum. And then I think like maybe 2 3 years ago they actually passed a law in California to be able to teach ethnic studies in high school courses and stuff like that, which really wasn't like an option for students back then. And so I guess I can take a lot of pride in that, because all the effort and all the work we've done has actually been paid for. And it's I'm happy to be able to give that to students who are growing up in high school now and stuff. So it's a
mhm.
huge accomplishment for that.
No, yeah, that's super dope to hear because you were part of something. You were part of the what do they call it? Like the groundwork, the foundation of something that eventually was able to get fixed. And that's the beautiful thing about this country is that if enough people do put their minds together, I mean, we have that freedom to protest and we have that freedom to actually, all these laws that are currently in existence, they're all capable of changing. I mean, look at like marijuana, for a long, long, long
Yeah.
time. people were so anti marijuana, but now it's California. It's legal for both medically and recreationally, and it's starting to spread to every other state too. So, everything is capable of change. You just got to, start at the ground level and work our way up.
Yeah, that's true. And like you said, it's been seen. I can't tell you how many dispensaries are around here and stuff like that.
Yeah, it
It's
makes it.
crazy to think. It's crazy to think about all this stuff that is now like open to people. And individuals
Yeah.
who would have thought like, But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, just because I remember going back to the dispensary thing. I mean, I remember being 18, 19 out of high school, and you could get like a recreational, not a, I forgot what it was called. You had to get like a medical card to be able to use and to go to dispensaries to pick up. And I remember,
Yeah.
dude, most of the dispensaries were like in back alleys, all sketched out. And a lot of times I had never been at a dispensary when it had gotten raided. But now to see the dispensaries now, there's like, it looked like dental offices, that has like magazines, and they buzz you in, you're behind a glass counter, and it's like, it's a trip, man. Because I just remember, being fresh out of high school, going to dispensaries, being all scared, like, that cops were gonna raid
Yeah.
this place, and now it's like super, like anyone can go in, and you're just like, fuck, this is in a span of 7, 8 years.
Yeah, and it's crazy how like innovative they've become, Like shit, man, like all of these dispensaries are going mobile now, and they deliver to your front door for all these other things, and it's just crazy, like definitely times have changed over the few years, and it's it's something new to us, So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So transitioning to present day for the year 2020, what are some other goals that you want to be able to accomplish at the end of this year?
Well, having that said, I think right now it's kind of difficult because of like the whole situation everybody's going through,
Mm-hmm.
But I can definitely see some goals out there. Definitely to get the podcast rolling more, get more content on there, you know, try to familiarize myself with you know, having the courage of actually reaching out to folks and, interviewing them because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of shy about that, I'm not
Oh
really
yeah.
the outgoing type of person,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely working on the podcast and getting out there more. And I think the first thing for me would be to finish school strong. I only have about summer and the next semester after that, and hopefully after that I can transfer to a university.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as that goes, other than that would just be to get like my work permit again, be able to get an income again, be able to help my parents. And also in June I'm moving out with my girlfriend, so that's going to be like a new adventure for me. It's going to be a new experience for me to be able to pay rent. And it's going to be a trip, but I think it'll be something to experience, like something really good to experience. And yeah, just having everybody healthy, taking care of everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll just like offer a little bit of advice. It is very scary sometimes to like ask people, and a lot of times it's just like emails and DMs, or just like maybe shooting a text message to someone that knows someone. But I feel it is a big risk. Like don't get me wrong. Like I'll get really scared when I message people to be on the show, but man, if they do respond back and you do able to get them on the show, it's a huge, like, to me it's a big like thrill of excitement, almost like you just got off a roller coaster. And then when you do get to actually record with
Yeah.
that person, you're like, damn, like that, yeah, I made that happen, I made that possible. Like, sometimes, so you'll every now and then, like, for sure I'll get on a streak of like 50 no's, and but then I'll get that one yes, and that one yes is bigger than the 50 people I asked before. And it's just like, all right, well then that shit almost outweighs itself, kind of. So just continue to put yourself out there, because I think the message that you're trying to spread is really great, and needs to be heard by more people.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I mean, likewise to you. You have a huge amount of episodes out there,
Hmm.
and it's to be honest, it's impossible for me to, get listening to all like 100
Yeah.
and something of them, And props to you, man. Props to you because you actually one out of five times I'm on my phone or whatever, and
Hmm.
it's a sign of motivation for me, to be able to get out there more and dream, and you're making it happen. You're putting it out there for people, and it brings joy to you. It brings excitement, like you said. It's something that is only yours, and because it's only yours, it's special.
Hmm.
So props to you, man. Huge respect.
Hey, appreciate that, man. Before we end this show, I do like to ask a couple fun questions at the end just to help the listeners get to know you a little bit more. If you could have any kind of toppings on a pizza, what would they be?
I'm kind of just like an original guy, man. Just you know, it would be like pepperoni, sausage,
Okay.
mushroom pepper, just the typical original combo.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. If you could have any kind of exotic pet, what would it be?
I think for this one it would have to be like a jaguar or something,
Oh, okay.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
would. If you could go to any time period in history, what time period would you want to go visit?
I think for me it would have to be during like the times of like the Mexican Revolution or something.
Mm.
There's just something about that time that like I would have wished I would have been out there with like Pancho Villa or something, Emiliano Zapata.
Hey, yeah, that'd be actually really cool to see,
But
huh?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. All right. If you could talk to any person, dead or alive, or multiple people, who would they be?
I think for me it would be someone personal, someone for example like my uncle that I lost, at such a young age.
Hmm.
Uh like when I lost him, it was like I lost half of myself. And so I would want to go back and try to get to recover all the time that's been lost.
Hmm.
But yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any like dream vacation spots, places that you want to visit for sure?
To be honest, like I want to go back where I came from. I want to get to know like my family and the land, going back to the place that I was born in. I think it's a beautiful thing, and just to be able to reconnect with that side of the world and stuff. But for me it's kind of just small and personal, and trying to gain that like that feeling of being home again.
Yeah. Now, last one. If you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I think I would have told myself since the beginning, like, just to get on the right track. uh I grew up with not as much as a friendly environment around me, and I was influenced by the wrong people, and I made mistakes. And I think that now that I look back, it's like I should have, paid more attention to what I actually wanted to do, not what I was influenced by. And just make it better for myself. Because if I could go back, I would definitely go back and restart a few things in my life, so that I would end up being maybe someone better than what I am. But right now I'm fortunate, where I am and how I've shaped myself, and the people that I've surrounded myself with. And there's a lot of mad love and respect for the people that have kept up with me, and whether it's a friend or a family. And um, you know there's a lot of love out there. So yeah.
Oh man, really, really appreciate you again for hopping on this show. Real quick too, if you could plug your Instagram where the people can listen to your podcast and anything else you want to plug.
Yeah, so the podcast is the Pa la Raza podcast on Instagram. And usually I'll just post one of the main things is like the recordings I put out there, some of the episodes. There's a little bit of a history that I like to share about our culture and stuff. And yeah, I mean, just uh for other people who already follow me or whatever, it'd be an honor for you to come on the show and share your story. And you know from now on, I'll come up with some questions, and maybe I can have you, Noah, on one of my episodes and stuff, and speak about your life and stuff. That'd be
Hey, that'd
pretty
be
cool.
dope. Yeah, little what do they call that, like in TV, crossover?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be tight. All right, yeah, appreciate that, man.
Mhm.